It was a rain-lashed midnight at a lonely diner. A black woman named Clara faced a tense standoff. Two police officers and a Hell's Angel. In a heartbeat, she made a choice that defied all reason. She stepped into the line of fire, and she lied. Why would she risk everything to protect a stranger? Before we go any deeper into this incredible story of courage and community, if you believe in the power of kindness, make sure you're part of ours. Hit that like button, subscribe to Hidden Heroes, and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story that proves humanity is still good. And right now, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Drop a comment and just say, hello from your city. It always amazes me to see how far these hidden heroes reach. To understand the monumental weight of Clara's decision, you have to understand Clara. And to understand Clara, you had to step into the all-night Beacon Diner. It was more than a restaurant. It was a sanctuary. The neon sign outside was half burnt out, so it just read, Be-Con. But for the lost, the lonely, the truckers fighting off sleep, and the night shift workers with souls weary from the grind, it was exactly that. A beacon. And at its heart was Clara. At 58, her face was a map of a life lived with resilience. The lines around her eyes were from laughter, sure, but also from years of squinting under the fluorescent lights, counting tips that were never quite enough, and from worries that visited her in the quietest hours of the night. She'd bought the diner with her late husband, Marcus, a dream built with calloused hands and sheer will. When cancer took him 5 years ago, the dream became a memorial. Every cracked vinyl booth, every chipped coffee mug held a piece of him. She worked 7 days a week, not because she wanted to, but because she had to. The town wasn't kind to a lone black business owner. They drove past her on their way to the bigger chains on the interstate. She was holding on, but just barely, by her fingertips. And on this particular rain-lashed night, the diner was empty, save for one soul. A mountain of a man sitting in a corner booth, his massive frame seeming to swallow the light around him. He wore the colors, the winged death's head of the Hell's Angels. His name, though Clara didn't know it yet, was Arthur Grizzly Jones. And he wasn't causing trouble. He was just existing, nursing a black coffee, staring into the abyss of his own reflection in the dark window. Clara had served him without a word, her heart doing a nervous tap dance against her ribs. She'd heard the stories. Everyone had. But she also saw something else, a deep, profound sadness in his eyes that mirrored her own. For an hour, the only sounds were the rain, the hum of the grill, and the soft scratch of his pen as he worked on a crossword puzzle. It was a fragile, quiet peace, a peace that was about to be shattered by the blinding flash of blue and red lights pulling into the gravel lot. The door chimed, a sound that usually meant welcome, but now felt like a warning. 2 police officers stepped in, shaking the rain from their jackets. Their eyes scanned the room and immediately, instinctively, locked onto Grizzly. The air left the room. Clara felt the shift. It was a chemical change. From behind the counter, she watched their posture stiffen, their hands drift casually, purposefully to rest on their utility belts. They didn't see a man drinking coffee. They saw a patch, a symbol, a threat. The older officer, his voice a low, practiced monotone, approached the booth. "Evening. Mind if we have a word?" Grizzly didn't look up from his puzzle. "I'm having my coffee, officer, not breaking any laws." The cop's smile was thin, plastic. "We had a call, a disturbance. Big guy matching your description causing some trouble a few blocks over." It was a flimsy excuse, a classic fishing expedition. Grizzly finally looked up, his eyes like flint. "Wasn't me. I've been here for over an hour." The second officer, younger, more eager, took a step closer. "Why don't you come outside with us, sir? We can sort this out without bothering the nice lady." The subtext was clear, dangerous. Clara's mind raced. She knew this dance. She'd seen it played out 100 times with other men who didn't fit the town's idea of respectable. It always started with a friendly chat outside. Her palms were sweating. She thought of Marcus. He'd always stood up for the little guy, for the person being pushed around. He'd say, "Clara, sometimes the right thing ain't the safe thing." She looked at Grizzly, a man surrounded, outnumbered, being railroaded for the crime of looking like who he was. And then she looked at the officers, who hadn't even acknowledged her existence. The fear was a cold knot in her stomach. But rising beneath it was something hotter, something fiercer, a righteous indignation. She wiped her hands on her apron, took a deep breath that felt like it might be her last, and stepped out from behind the counter. Every step towards them echoed on the linoleum floor. All three men turned to look at her. "Officers," she said, her voice surprisingly steady, cutting through the tension like a knife. "This gentleman is telling the truth. He's been my only customer for the last hour and 15 minutes. He's been no trouble at all." She looked the older cop right in the eye, her heart hammering against her ribs. She was all in. "There was no disturbance here, I can assure you." The silence that followed was heavier than the rain outside. The officers were stunned. Their narrative had been broken. The younger cop's face flushed with frustration. "Mom, with all due respect, we're conducting an investigation. We'd appreciate it if you'd let us do our job." Clara didn't flinch. She crossed her arms, a mother protecting her cub. "And I'm telling you, your investigation is in the wrong diner. He's been here, with me, the whole time." She emphasized the words, "with me," building a wall around her customer with nothing but her testimony. She was committing to the lie now, and there was no going back. She could be charged. She could lose her license. The diner was all she had left of Marcus, and she was gambling it on a man she didn't know. Grizzly watched her, his expression unreadable. The warring officers finally exchanged a look. They had no evidence, no reason to doubt the owner's account, and they knew it. With a few muttered words and a final hard glance at Grizzly, they turned and left. The blue and red lights faded into the rain. The diner was silent again, but the peace was gone, replaced by an electric, post-storm stillness. Clara let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding, her knees feeling weak. She turned to look at Grizzly. He was staring at her, his crossword forgotten. The hardness in his eyes had melted away, replaced by something she couldn't quite decipher. Awe, confusion, immense gratitude. He slowly stood up. He was enormous, towering over her. For a terrifying second, she wondered if she'd made a catastrophic mistake. But he just walked to the counter. He placed a $100 bill next to his $2.50 coffee cup. "Thank you," he said, his voice a low, gravelly rumble that seemed to come from deep within his chest. It was more than a thank you for the coffee. It was for everything. He turned and walked out into the rain, his motorcycle roaring to life a moment later and fading into the distance. Clara stood alone, the $100 bill feeling like a burning secret in her hand. She had no idea if she'd just made a powerful friend or painted a target on her back. The night passed in a blur of anxiety. Would the cops come back? Would Grizzly tell his brothers? What had she done? Sleep wouldn't come. She arrived at the diner the next morning exhausted, expecting she didn't know what. Retribution? A citation? She just knew the fear was still there, a cold stone in her gut. She unlocked the doors at 6 a.m., her hands trembling. She started the coffee brewers, the familiar routine doing little to calm her nerves. And then she heard it. A low rumble in the distance, not a truck. Something else. The rumble grew from a whisper to a growl and then to a deafening, earth-shaking roar. Clara froze, a coffee pot in her hand. She walked to the window, her breath catching in her throat. What she saw made her legs turn to water. Motorcycles. Not just a few, dozens, then 100, then more than she could count. A river of chrome and steel and black leather pouring off the highway and rolling into her gravel parking lot. They kept coming, filing into rows, a perfectly orchestrated army on two wheels, and on every back she saw the same patch, the winged skull, Hell's Angels, from every chapter, every corner of the state. Her heart plummeted. This was it. She'd interfered in their business, and this was the consequence. She had humiliated their brother in front of the law, and now they were here to return the favor. She thought about locking the door, calling the police, but it was too late. The engines cut off one by one, and the sudden silence was more terrifying than the noise. The lead rider, a man with a long gray beard and a face like worn leather, dismounted. It was Grizzly, and he wasn't alone. 200 men and women, looking every bit as fearsome as the stories said, dismounted and began to walk towards her door. Clara closed her eyes, waiting for the sound of shattering glass. But it never came. The door chimed softly. Grizzly stood there, and for the first time she saw a small smile creasing his weathered face. Behind him, the sea of bikers stood respectfully, not surging forward. "Clara," Grizzly said, his voice gentle, "we're here for breakfast." It wasn't a threat. It was a statement. They filed in, not with aggression, but with a quiet, respectful order. They filled every booth, every seat at the counter. They pulled out extra tables. They called her ma'am. They ordered the biggest items on the menu, the full breakfast platters, stacks of pancakes, endless cups of coffee. They weren't here to intimidate. They were here to pay. Word of her courage had spread through the network overnight. She had stood up for one of theirs when no one else would. And in their code, a debt like that is paid in kind. For the rest of the day, Clara and her single waitress worked in a beautiful, chaotic whirlwind. The bikers were polite, jovial, leaving 100% tips on massive bills. But it was more than the money. It was the restoration of faith. The fear was gone, replaced by an overwhelming, profound sense of community. The local news van even showed up, filming the incredible scene of the most notorious motorcycle club in the world, peacefully packing a small-town diner. By the end of the day, Clara's cash register was overflowing. But more importantly, so was her heart. Clara's diner, the B-Con, truly became a beacon that day. Not just for the lost and lonely, but for a powerful lesson we all need to be reminded of. That a single act of courage, of choosing kindness over fear, can create ripples that change everything. The Hell's Angels didn't just pay her back for one coffee, they became lifelong patrons and protectors. Business boomed from that day forward as people came from miles around to eat at the biker diner. Clara had saved a man from a bad night, and in return, an army had saved her dream. She proved that heroes aren't defined by their appearance, their job, or the patch on their back. They are defined by the choices they make in the darkest moments. She saw a human being when everyone else saw a stereotype. And that is a hidden hero. What did you think of Clara's incredible story? What would you have done in her shoes? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Let's have a conversation about the power of courage. And if this story moved you, please help us uncover more hidden heroes. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss our next video.